Sell the store to your brother, or you're no longer our daughter. The words cut through the crowded dining room like shattered glass. Forks froze midair, glasses trembled against the wooden table, and every pair of eyes turned to me. My mother's hand shook as she slammed her fork down, her lips pressed tight in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. My father sat rigid beside her, his expression carved from stone. And across the table, my brother Evan leaned back in his chair with a smirk that screamed victory before the war had even begun. That store wasn't just real estate. It was the legacy my late husband and I had built together. Every brick, every sign, every shelf stocked with organic produce carried Nolan's fingerprints. Losing him in that accident had ripped a hole in my chest, but keeping the store alive gave me purpose. To my parents, though, it was just a $700,000 prize to hand over to their golden boy. I clenched my hands under the table, my nails digging crescents into my palms. "No," I whispered, my voice steadier than I expected. Silence. A silence so heavy I could hear the ticking of the wall clock behind me. My mom leaned forward, her eyes narrowing like a predator. "Don't be selfish, Heidi. Family comes first." Evan's smirk widened, his voice dripping with fake charm. "Come on, sis. You'll be fine. I actually have big plans for the money. A startup, investors waiting. This could change my life." I wanted to laugh. Change his life? They had spent my entire life changing everything for him. Cars, rent, failed ventures, all funded by their endless excuses. And now, even Nolan's dream, even the last piece of him I had left, was just another stepping stone for Evan. But instead of laughing, I stood up. My chair scraped loudly across the floor, the sound cutting through the room like thunder. My chest burned with fury and grief, but my voice came out cold. "I'm not selling, not now, not ever." Their faces twisted with shock, anger, and disbelief. Evan sputtered like a child denied candy. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's voice rose an octave, sharp and shrill. "Then you're no longer welcome in this family." I didn't wait for the explosion that followed. I picked up my coat, walked out the door, and felt the night air sting my cheeks like ice water. My pulse hammered, but I didn't stumble. They thought I'd cave. They thought wrong. They had no idea what was coming. Before we go on, tell me, have you ever faced an ultimatum that tried to strip away your worth? Drop your story in the comments, hit subscribe, and smash that like button. Because, trust me, you don't want to miss how this story unfolds. Before that dinner turned my world upside down, my life was already marked by a line between love and neglect. I met Nolan Fisher 7 years ago at an art fair in Birmingham. He wasn't just charming, he was magnetic. His laugh rolled like warm thunder. His ideas about sustainability and design lit up every conversation, and when he talked about opening a natural food store in 5 Points, it wasn't just a dream. It was a blueprint for a better life. I was a freelance graphic designer at the time, chasing deadlines and juggling clients. But Nolan saw something in me that no one else had. Not my parents, not even myself. He pushed me to believe that I could create something bigger. Together, we built the store from the ground up. Nolan negotiated with suppliers, secured a $300,000 loan, and spent weekends sanding shelves with his bare hands. I designed the logo, painted signs until my fingers cramped, and crafted a brand that felt warm, human, real. 2 years later, that store opened its doors. Valued at $700,000, it wasn't just a business. It was our love story etched in wood and glass. Customers walked in for organic produce, but they stayed for the community Nolan created. He'd talk to strangers like they were old friends, sketch expansion plans on napkins, and dream about a chain of stores spreading across the state. And then, one rainy night, the dream stopped. A truck ran a red light. The hospital call came at 1 a.m. I remember sprinting through the ER doors, my chest burning, my heart begging for a miracle. But there was nothing left to save. Nolan was gone. Grief hollowed me out, but the store kept me breathing. Every jar on the shelf, every local farmer's delivery, each piece of it held him. Letting go of the store would have been letting go of him, and I wasn't ready. I'm still not ready. My parents never understood that. To them, the store was a prize to cash out, a convenient solution to Evan's endless failures. They never saw the hours Nolan and I spent on our knees laying tiles, or the way his eyes lit up when the first customer walked in. They didn't care about legacy. They cared about convenience. And in that moment, when they demanded I sell, they weren't just asking me to give up property. They were asking me to erase Nolan, to erase us. But if they thought I would let that happen, they had no idea who I'd become since the day I lost him. And that's exactly where the cracks began to show, because the harder they pushed, the more determined I became. In the next chapter, you'll see how their obsession with control didn't just backfire. It exposed them for who they truly were. It didn't take long for my parents to strike back after that dinner. The very next week, I could feel the storm brewing, not inside my home, but out in the community Nolan and I had poured our hearts into. The whispers came first. At the farmer's market, an old neighbor brushed past me with a stiff smile. Later that afternoon, a message pinged on my phone from my cousin Jenna. "Why wanted you share the store's money? Brent deserves his chance." My stomach nodded. They'd been talking. My parents had turned my refusal into a family-wide campaign. By Wednesday, the pressure was suffocating. My inbox was overflowing. Dozens of messages from distant relatives, family friends, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. Each one carried the same poisoned thread. Family comes first. Don't be greedy. Think about your brother's future. The cruelest blow came from someone I once admired. Mrs. Grant, my old high school art teacher, called me. Her voice was warm at first, then sharp with disappointment. "Heidi," she said, "your parents tell me you're refusing to help Brent. Don't let money tear your family apart." My chest tightened. This wasn't about money, it never had been. It was about Nolan, about the years we spent building the store. But no one seemed to care. My parents' version of the story had spread like wildfire, painting me as the villain, hoarding what should have been shared. Even at the local coffee shop, I couldn't escape. Sarah, a family friend who once babysat me, pulled me aside. Her eyes were cold, her words quick. "Everyone's saying you're selfish. Is it true?" I muttered something about it being complicated, but her frown told me her mind was already made up. I left my untouched latte on the counter, walking into the street with my heart pounding. The city I'd grown up in, the same one where Nolan and I had fought to build something meaningful, now felt hostile, filled with eyes that judged and whispered behind my back. But not everyone turned against me. That night, Mara showed up. My best friend since college, fiery and unshakable. She barged into my apartment with takeout and a fierce look. "Don't let them gaslight you," she said, dropping her bag on the couch. "That store is Nolan's gift to you. They're trying to wear you down. Don't give in." Her words were a lifeline. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen. I realized my parents weren't just trying to pressure me privately, they were waging a public war. And if I kept playing defense, I'd lose. But what they didn't know was that I was already planning a move they'd never see coming. In the next chapter, their smug certainty is about to collapse when I introduce someone into the fight who changes everything. While my parents worked overtime to smear my name, I realized something critical. They expected me to fight them their way, to scream, to beg, to defend myself against every rumor. But I wasn't going to play defense anymore. I needed a weapon, something bigger than gossip. That's when Spencer Cole came to mind. He wasn't just anyone. Spencer was sharp, ambitious, and, ironically, my brother Brent's boss at the tech startup. Brent had bragged about working there, though everyone knew he barely showed up. Spencer, on the other hand, had a reputation for being ruthless in business, but fair to those who delivered results. One late night after Mara left, I scrolled through my old contacts and found his number. My hands trembled as I typed, "Interested in a business deal? It's about the store." I didn't expect a response until morning, but within minutes, 3 dots appeared. Then his reply, "Let's meet." We agreed on a quiet diner across town, neutral ground, far from my parents' reach. The next evening, I walked in, my heart pounding as I spotted him in a corner booth, crisp suit, coffee steaming in front of him. "Heidi Walsh," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Haven't seen you since high school. So, what's this about a store?" I slid into the booth and took a steadying breath. His eyebrow arched. "Go on." I explained my plan. Spencer would buy the store outright, fair price, no strings. But I'd lease the upstairs space back from him for my design studio. That way, Nolan's legacy wouldn't vanish, and I'd still have a home base for my career. Spencer listened quietly, then leaned back, studying me with a look that felt like he was weighing every word. Finally, he smiled, sharp and deliberate. I like it. Clean, strategic, and if it irritates Brent along the way, well, that's just a bonus. Relief washed over me, but beneath it, adrenaline surged. For the first time since that awful dinner, I wasn't just reacting. I was moving pieces on the board. We shook hands before leaving, his grip firm, sealing the deal. Papers would be drawn up within days. Walking back to my car, the night air felt different. Lighter. I knew my parents were still scheming, spreading lies, gathering allies, but soon all their plotting would shatter with a single revelation. Because when they came storming into the store with their realtor expecting to win, they had no idea who was about to walk through the back door. Friday morning started quiet. Sunlight filtered through the storefront windows, bouncing off the shelves Nolan and I had built with our own hands. I was restocking produce, the rhythm steady, almost soothing. But deep down, I knew it was the calm before the storm. The bell above the door jingled sharply, and in stormed my parents. Mom's heels clacked against the floor like gunshots. Dad's jaw was tight, and behind them Brent swaggered in, smirk plastered on his face. Trailing after them was Doris Clark, a local realtor with a clipboard and a fake smile that screamed she smelled money. My pulse spiked, but I forced my hands to stay steady as I wiped them on my apron. Mom didn't waste a second. "We're here to settle this," she announced, her voice slicing through the store's silence. "Doris has a buyer lined up. You're signing the papers today." Dad crossed his arms, his glare drilling into me. "Enough games, Heidi. Do what's right for your brother." Brent stepped forward, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Come on, sis. Don't be selfish. This is bigger than you. I could turn this money into millions." His smirk widened. "You'll thank me someday." Every word was a knife, but I held my ground. Doris cleared her throat, flipping through papers. "This is a fair cash offer," she chimed. "You could walk away with a clean slate." I glanced at each of them. Mom with her calculated fury, Dad with his cold silence, Brent practically drooling at the thought of a payday. They thought this was checkmate. They thought they had me cornered. I took a deep breath and let my voice cut through the tension. "You might want to hold off on that paperwork." Before they could react, the back door creaked open. Footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor, steady, confident. Spencer Cole appeared, crisp suit, calm expression, radiating authority that instantly shifted the energy in the room. "Morning, Heidi," he said casually, then turned to my family. His words were smooth, deliberate, and devastating. "I'm Spencer Cole, the new owner of this store." The room froze. Mom's mouth fell open. Dad's arms dropped to his sides. Brent's smirk shattered, replaced with a mask of disbelief. Doris blinked, fumbled with her clipboard, and muttered, "New owner?" Spencer didn't flinch. "The deal was finalized last week. Papers signed, notarized, filed. This store belongs to me now." I watched the color drain from their faces, the reality sinking in. My parents had stormed in ready for victory, but I'd already taken the battlefield out from under them. And what I revealed next made their shock turn into full-blown panic. The silence after Spencer's announcement was thick enough to choke on. Mom's eyes darted from me to Spencer, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for oxygen. Dad's face flushed red, veins standing out on his neck. And Brent just stood there wide-eyed like a kid who'd just realized Christmas was canceled. "You can't do this," Mom finally screeched, her voice breaking. "This is our family's business." I stepped forward, my hands steady even though my heart hammered in my chest. "No, Mom, this was Nolan's and mine. He left it to me, and I chose what to do with it." Spencer crossed his arms, calm as ever. "Legally, it's done. There's no loophole, no bargaining." His gaze flicked to Doris, who was pale and already sliding her papers back into her briefcase. "Your services won't be needed." "But," Doris stammered but stopped under Spencer's sharp look. She packed up faster than I'd ever seen. Brent finally found his voice. "You sold it to him?" He jabbed a finger at Spencer, his voice cracking. "Do you know what you've done? That was my future." I let a small smile spread across my face. "Funny you say that, Brent. Because I did make sure this store was part of your future, just not in the way you imagined. They all froze. I gestured toward the staircase that led upstairs. I signed a lease with Spencer. That space above the store? That's my new design studio. I'm not going anywhere. Mom gasped, clutching Dad's arm as if I'd stabbed her. Brent's face twisted in confusion. And there's more, I added, my tone sharp. Brent, you wanted this place so badly? Congratulations, you're going to see it every day. Because Spencer just hired you. I paused, savoring the moment. To manage inventory. Brent blinked. What? Spencer nodded, voice flat and professional. You start Monday. It's grunt work. Count shipments, stock shelves. Keep the place in order. If you can't handle it, you're out. The silence cracked like glass. Brent's face went crimson, his fists clenched at his sides. Mom sputtered. You can't do this to him. But I could. And I had. You all thought you could corner me, I said softly, my words slicing sharper than a scream. But while you were plotting to take Nolan's legacy, I was already 3 steps ahead. Their anger filled the room, but beneath it, I saw something new flicker across their faces. Fear. And when they realized just how airtight my plan really was, that fear turned into desperation. The Monday Brent started working under Spencer was a day I'll never forget. He shuffled in late, hair uncombed, muttering under his breath. Every slam of a box, every glare he threw my way from downstairs, only confirmed what I already knew. He hated every second of it. And that hate was about to turn into something uglier. 3 weeks later, my lawyer Lois called with the news. Heidi, they've filed a lawsuit, she said, her tone calm but edged with steel. Your parents are claiming the sale was fraudulent. They're saying Spencer coerced you, pressured you into signing the store away. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Coerced? Spencer's a tech CEO who could buy 10 more stores if he wanted. If anything, I had to convince him to take the deal. Lois's sigh crackled through the line. I know, but they're desperate, and desperation makes people reckless. Don't worry, we've got airtight contracts, notarized signatures, and a paper trail longer than your brother's rap sheet. Still, the thought of sitting across from my parents in a courtroom made my stomach knot. The first hearing was brutal. Mom sat at the plaintiff's table, pearls tight around her neck, eyes blazing like she was leading a crusade. Dad avoided my gaze, lips pressed into a thin line. And Brent. He lounged back in his chair, smirking like a spoiled child watching someone else do his dirty work. Their lawyer, Roger Tate, strutted in with the arrogance of a man who thought charm could rewrite the law. Ladies and gentlemen, he said to the judge, this is a clear case of manipulation. A grieving widow, pressured into a hasty sale by a businessman with ulterior motives. I clenched my fists under the table, the words scraping across my nerves. Grieving widow. Like I was weak. Like Nolan's death made me incapable of making a decision. Lois stood, her voice like a whip. Your Honor, this is nonsense. We have the original will, the notarized contract, and evidence of the payment transfer. Ms. Walsh acted with full knowledge and counsel. This was no coercion. It was a business decision. The judge nodded slightly, flipping through the thick stack of documents Lois had prepared. Mom leaned toward Roger, whispering furiously, her nails digging into his sleeve. When it was my turn to testify, I steadied my breath. This store wasn't just a business. It was my late husband's legacy. I chose to sell it to someone I trusted, and I made sure to keep a piece of it for myself. My parents may not like it, but that doesn't make it illegal. For the first time, I saw the smirk slip from Brent's face. The judge didn't rule that day, but I could see the writing on the wall. Roger's arguments had been flimsy, and Lois had shredded them with precision. Still, Mom-esque glare as we left the courtroom told me one thing: she wasn't done. And when their legal tricks failed, my family turned to something even nastier: public humiliation. The lawsuit hadn't even cooled when the whispers began. At first, it was small things. A neighbor giving me a sharp look at the grocery store, a friend canceling lunch without explanation. But by the end of the week, it was everywhere. My parents hadn't won in court, so they chose a battlefield they'd ruled for years, the court of public opinion. It started with a Facebook post from Mom, a long, self-pitying rant with a photo of Brent looking solemn in front of the store. Heidi betrayed her family, she wrote. She sold her father's dream to outsiders, leaving her brother with nothing. Family should come before money. The comments rolled in fast. Unbelievable, how could she do that to her own brother? So selfish. Poor Brent. He deserved that store. Each one was a dagger. People I'd grown up with, neighbors who'd eaten Nolan's organic bread samples and laughed with us in the aisles, suddenly saw me as a villain. At the farmer's market, whispers followed me like shadows. Mrs. Larson, who used to babysit me, muttered loud enough for me to hear. She's forgotten her roots. Nolan would be ashamed. My blood boiled, but I bit my tongue. Arguing would only fuel Mom's fire. Brent, of course, leaned into it. He strutted around town painting himself as the wronged son. I was supposed to inherit that store, he'd say at the bar, nursing beers on Mom and Dad's tab. My sister sold it out from under me. The smear campaign worked, at least for a while. Calls from distant cousins poured in. Texts dripped with guilt trips. Heidi, this isn't like you. Can't you compromise for once? Think about the family. Even my old art teacher, Mrs. Grant, left a voicemail. Family is more important than pride, dear. Every word stung like acid. They were twisting Nolan's legacy into a weapon against me. But not everyone believed the lies. Mara, my best friend, stormed into my apartment one night carrying takeout and fury. They're trying to break you down, she snapped, tossing her bag on the table. But I know you, Heidi. You've carried that store on your back since Nolan died. Don't let their lies become your truth. Her words steadied me. For the first time in weeks, I breathed without the weight crushing my chest. Then something unexpected happened. A neighbor, Clara Evans, stopped by the store with a tin of cookies. Her voice was firm. Your parents are telling everyone you cheated Brent, but I know better. You've always worked harder than anyone. I'm on your side. Her support was a spark. Soon, others joined, old customers, community members who remembered Nolan's vision. They began speaking up online, countering Mom's narrative with the truth. The smear campaign wasn't over, but cracks were forming. Mom and Dad weren't prepared for pushback. And Brent? His mask of the wronged son was starting to slip in front of the very people he wanted to impress. But just when I thought I could breathe, my parents tried one last desperate move, something that could have destroyed me if I hadn't been ready. If the courtroom loss stung them, the community pushback burned like salt in an open wound. My parents had always thrived on image, potluck smiles, Sunday church accolades, whispers of being the perfect family. Now, cracks in that facade were spreading, and they hated me for it. Their final move came on a stormy Thursday afternoon. I was in my studio upstairs, sketching a logo for a local bakery, when Lois, my lawyer, called. Her tone was sharp, urgent. Heidi, your parents just filed an emergency injunction. They are reclaiming the sale to Spencer was fraudulent, saying you acted under duress and that Spencer exploited you. I nearly dropped my pen. Fraudulent? My voice shook, fury rising. The sale was clean. You notarized everything. I know, Lois said calmly. But they've hired a shark, a lawyer named Roger Tate. He'll try to drag this out, make you look unstable, irresponsible. They want to bleed you dry with court costs until you fold. I clenched the edge of my desk until my knuckles went white. My chest pounded, sweat beating at my temples. It wasn't enough for them to smear me in the community. Now they wanted to strip me of my sanity, my savings, everything Nolan had left me. That night, the storm outside mirrored the chaos inside me. Rain hammered against the windows, thunder rolled, and I sat on the floor with Mara, takeout cartons scattered around us. This is their endgame, I muttered. If they can't shame me into giving Brent the store, they'll destroy me through the courts. Mara leaned closer, eyes fierce. Then don't just defend yourself. Expose them. Her words sparked a fire. I pulled out my laptop, digging through every email, every contract, every message tied to the store. Spencer joined us on a late-night call, his jaw tight but steady. They underestimated us, he said. I've kept receipts, texts from Brent bragging about how his parents would force Heidi out. Emails from your mom hinting that the sale was a temporary thing, like they'd undo it later. We can turn their lies into evidence. By midnight, I had a thick digital folder ready. Lois was right. This wasn't just about defense anymore. It was about offense. The next court session was explosive. Roger Tate strutted in, slick suit, confident grin. He painted me as a grieving widow manipulated by a businessman. He pointed at Spencer like he was a predator and at me like I was weak. Then Lois rose, calm and precise. She played Spencer's saved texts aloud. Brent's own words echoed in the courtroom. Once Heidi cracks, the store's mine. The room went dead silent. My parents' faces drained of color. Lois slid forward another exhibit. The notarized will Nolan had left me, followed by the contract Spencer and I had signed. Ironclad, untouchable. The judge's gavel struck hard. The sale is valid. The plaintiff's claims are dismissed. It was over. My parents had played their last card and lost everything. But the fallout didn't stop at the courthouse. What came next shattered their reputation beyond repair and gave me the justice I'd been waiting for. The courthouse door shut behind me, and for the first time in months, I exhaled without fear. The injunction was crushed, the sale upheld, and their smear campaign shattered by their own son's careless words. But the real reckoning wasn't mine to deliver. It was the community's. By the following week, news of the court's decision had spread across Birmingham. Neighbors whispered not about me anymore, but about them. My parents, once the smiling hosts of every church fundraiser, were now the villains of every coffee shop conversation. Brent was mocked as the golden child who couldn't stand on his own 2 feet. Their carefully built image of virtue and family-first devotion collapsed in real time. At the farmer's market that Saturday, I overheard Mrs. Larson, the same neighbor who once scolded me, hissing to a friend, "Can you believe it? Forging stories to steal from their own daughter." Her friend shook her head. Shameful. Absolutely shameful. The very voices that once condemned me now condemned them. At the store, Spencer kept business booming while I poured my heart into my studio upstairs. The space became my sanctuary, sunlight spilling across sketches, the hum of customers below like background music to my rebuilding life. Every time I walked through those doors, I felt Nolan beside me, proud that I had stood my ground. Mom, on the other hand, crumbled under the weight of public scorn. She called and texted, her words shifting from venom to desperation. "Heidi, please, we can fix this. We're still family." I stared at the messages and pressed delete. Dad stayed silent. And Brent? Fired by Spencer within weeks for incompetence. His startup dreams evaporated, his arrogance exposed. Last I heard, he was working odd jobs out of state, his pride broken. For me, life didn't just stabilize, it flourished. Mara and I launched Reed & Walsh Creative, our design firm, and clients lined up. My work was featured in a local magazine as part of Birmingham's new wave of entrepreneurs. Customers who once believed the lies now came to me for logos, for branding, for art that carried resilience in every line. The true victory wasn't just keeping the store or surviving their betrayal. It was standing taller because of it. I didn't need their approval, their love, or their recognition. I had carved my own path. One evening, I locked up my studio, pausing under the sign Nolan and I had chosen years ago. The air was calm, the city lights flickering like embers. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the overlooked daughter or the grieving widow. I felt whole. I turned to the quiet street and whispered, almost to Nolan, almost to myself. They tried to erase me, but I became impossible to ignore. And that, more than any lawsuit, more than any rumor, was justice. Now I want to ask you, what is the most satisfying moment of justice you've ever seen? Drop it in the comments, subscribe for more stories, and let's talk about it.